Hey, what's up guys, TechTitan here, and this is my 2-month revisited of the 2024 Moto Edge. We have some things to talk about, but before I begin, I want to thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoy my videos, I really do appreciate it, and a special thank you to everyone that got me to the 40,000 subscriber mark point. I really do appreciate you guys. But with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about the 2024 Moto Edge now that I've been using this phone for 2 months. The first thing that changed since this phone has been released is the price. Which is a good thing because now this phone starts at $449 unlocked instead of the $599 MSRP that this phone came out with, which is a more competitive price, and that's really good considering all the things that you get with this phone. Beginning with the design itself, so the back has this again fake leather material that feels really good in the hand. If there's one big downside is the fact that it gets dirty and catches dust, and it's a little bit harder to clean than your standard glossy or kind of matte surface. This surface is a little bit harder to clean but does feel a little bit more premium. On the back you also get your dual camera setup. You get your main sensor at 50 megapixel that does support optical image stabilization, and you also get your ultra wide sensor, which we will talk about later. And just so you'll know, you have a kind of a premium phone when there's no headphone jack, so your SIM tool, your USB-C that supports really crazy fast charging, and your speakers at the bottom. And on the right hand side you do have these really thin power button, volume up and down. Now with these buttons, they're clicky, they're tactile. It's just because of the edge, kind of the curvature on both the front of the phone and the back of the phone, it makes the button placement really thin, and it took a little bit of time to get used to, but it wasn't like crazy, nothing like it wasn't that big of a deal. Overall, 2 months later, I really appreciate Motorola's design scheme this year. So a lot of kind of fake leather material that is been used on pretty much all their phones this year. But now for the fun part, which is the display itself. So Motorola did bless us with a really good display, which is actually the big highlight behind this phone. But this display here is a 6.6 inch 2400 by 1080p. It is a AMOLED display, or they call it that POLED display. 1 billion colors, the ability to support crazy 144 hertz refresh rate, HDR10 plus support, 1300 nits of peak brightness, a 402 pixels per inch density. Yeah, there's a lot going on with the display, but bottom line is that this is one of the best looking displays that you can get for this price point, which again, this phone is still considered a mid-range device. 144 hertz is not on by default, but you can turn it on and take advantage of it if you want. Everything about this display is really good. If I were to nick this display, it would be in the actual use of the display, or the whole point of this phone, which is the edge. So as a look, it looks cool, but as far as using it, it can get obtrusive whenever you're watching videos, or kind of anything that requires kind of watching in kind of landscape mode would be a little bit obtrusive. But it wasn't nothing too crazy or too dramatic that I hated it. But that's just something that I wanted to mention. Overall though, this display completes this phone, right? And it still is one of the best things about this phone. If you want a quality display but you don't want to spend $1,000, then this might be a good option for you. Again, watching videos, consuming social media, things like that, it's pretty good for the most part. You may be missing out on a little bit of your content due to the edges of the phone, but again, it wasn't nothing too dramatic or too crazy. So overall, the display here is what honestly makes this phone. So let me switch and quickly talk about the performance now that I've been using this phone 2 months later. So here are your quick technical specs. This phone has kind of the Snapdragon 7S Gen 2 Adreno 710 GPU, 256 GB of standard storage, 8 GB of RAM, 5000 mAh battery. My favorite feature is a 68 watt wired charging and 15 watt wireless charging. So bottom line, this phone charges really crazy fast. When it came to the performance 2 months later, nothing has changed, right? So everything about this phone performs really smoothly. In addition to having a decent processor, the 144 hertz just makes the experience more smoother than it actually is, which again adds an additional layer of comfort when using this phone. When it comes to heavy demanding stuff, things that use a lot of GPU power, you may notice kind of lag from time to time, but light titles that don't require a lot of GPU would work fine on this phone. One of the things that I also noticed is because this phone is kind of crazy thin as well, is because of how thin it is, it does get warm when playing games for a certain period of time, but it wasn't nothing too dramatic that made me kind of be like, yeah, this is uncomfortable. I need to make this a top priority when talking about specs. So it does heat up a little bit, but nothing too dramatic. Now let me switch the conversation and talk a little bit about the camera experience. So this phone has a dual camera setup. I have a full camera review in the description below, but here's my summary. 50 megapixel main sensor. You also get a ultra wide clocked at 13 megapixels. You have the ability to shoot video at 4K 30 frames per second or 1080p at 30 or 60 frames per second. Mind you, when you do shoot 4K, you will be using the electronic image stabilization. Transitioning between the main sensor and the wide angle is a little bit sluggish, but it wasn't too bad. The pictures that came out of this phone as a summary are pretty good for what this phone is priced for. It's not going to compete with your iPhone 15 or, well, I guess at this point iPhone 16 or your latest Pixel or your latest Samsung flagship device, but it's not even meant to be. Right, it's meant to take good, decent pictures, and it does that very well for the most part. Watch my full review so you guys can get a better idea. And when it comes to low light photography, it's gonna struggle, there's no doubt about it. Okay, so one of the other things that I want to discuss about this phone is in the hardware itself, which is the additional button. I guess a lot of manufacturers nowadays like to add an additional button to their phones, but this one is actually pretty cool. So it's a customizable button. Think of it as like an action button, same as you would find on an iPhone or a Samsung device, or, well, I don't think Samsung does it anymore. So think of it as an action button that you can customize it to do pretty much anything that you want when it comes to launching apps. And apps that support it, you can actually customize it to do a little bit of a deeper things. For example, in Maps, if you have your Google Maps set up to where you have your location to go home, a specific location, you can set it up that way where if you click the action button, it would take you to that specific action. So that's pretty cool from Motorola, and it does have a function that allows you to disable kind of accidental clicks. Okay, this is a classic Motorola phone that is really good, and I feel like it's going to go under the radar a little bit, but it is what it is. It still is a pretty good phone. Do I recommend it? Absolutely. If you're in the market for a solid phone without breaking the bank, then this would definitely be it. And you all can't also forget about the gestures like the double chop to launch the flashlight, twist to launch the camera, and these fun things that I kind of miss with other phones. But overall, like I said, do I recommend this phone 2 months later? Absolutely, especially with the price cut. $449 I think is fair for this phone. Let me know what you guys think about this device. Do you hate it? Do you like it? Do you recommend it? Do you not recommend it? Your thoughts count, so leave them in the description below and I will catch you guys in the next one. Thank you all so much for watching.